With the issue of youth unemployment still a major concern in Nigeria, the need to devise a sustainable solution by bringing most of them to the workforce as provided for in Goal 8 of the SDGs is a desire that must be achieved. This was the cardinal objective of the recent roundtable dialogue by the Global Compact Network Nigeria held in Lagos recently. The meeting discussed and articulated key issues on financing the SDGs in Nigeria and also identified concrete actions for all stakeholders in a bid to mobilize action and deliver on the SDGs.
With the recognition that the Sustainable Development Goals cannot be achieved with public sector efforts alone, the Office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President on SDGs has, in line with the principles of partnership as elucidated in Goal 17, been collaborating with both state and non-state actors. The premium placed on the need for active participation of non-state actors necessitated the inauguration of the Private Sector Advisory Group and Strategic Platform is charged with the responsibility of mobilizing expertise and financial resources from critical non-state actors towards the achievement of the SDGs in Nigeria. The efforts received commendation from the visiting CEO and Executive Director of the Global Compact Network, Mrs. Lise Kingo.
I think the holistic, inclusive, multi-stakeholder approach that you have chosen in Nigeria could inspire many other countries across the world. I'm really impressed with the way you address each of the global goals, right from health to gender to young people to climate. And I think the interconnected way you communicate about the goals in the quarterly publications are absolutely excellent. So we are delighted to partner even closer, and the UN Global Compact is definitely always at the service of this great initiative.
The Private Sector Advisory Group shares a similar philosophy with the Global Compact, and it was not surprising when recently the latter hosted a roundtable dialogue on financing the SDGs and had the PSAG and the Office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President on SDGs fully represented. The CEO Breakfast Roundtable with the theme Bridging Nigeria's Sustainable Development Gap also brought together the business community, government representative at national and subnational levels, youths, civil society organizations, subject matter experts, and other critical stakeholders for a discourse on bridging Nigeria's sustainable development gap, financing the SDGs, and the role of the private sector in the development finance agenda. Senior Special Assistant to the President on SDGs, Princess Orilope Adefulure, in a video message to the meeting, spoke on the Nigerian experience with the SDGs and how a national perspective to the SDGs is likely to bring about inclusiveness in implementation from the public, private, and the development sector.
For us in Nigeria, the adoption of 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and Sustainable Development Goals was watershed in a global effort to eradicate poverty, reduce inequality, to protect our environment. We have since embarked on process for defining a clear pathway towards achievement of SDG in our country. We have mobilized and brought all stakeholders on different strategic platforms for proper coordination. Specifically, we have inaugurated the Presidential Council on SDG, chaired by Mr. President himself, while two standing committees, both at the upper and lower chamber of National Assembly, has been set up to strengthen the institutional mechanism and provide legislative backing for the goals. We have also strengthened the national awareness around the goals, while strong commitment has been made towards effective collaboration with all the stakeholders. For example, the government has set up the Private Sector Advisory Group, the Donor Partnership Forum, the Civil Society Strategy Group as key partners, and all our efforts are yielding great fruits.
The position of the presidential aide was also corroborated by her senior technical advisor, Dr. Bala Yunusa, who gave further insight into how the office is exploring the opportunities inherent in the public and private sector partnership to entrench the SDGs at the macro and micro levels.
Basically, there's this convergence between the membership of the UN Global Compact Nigeria and the Private Sector Advisory Group. So the two needs to work together for us to achieve our overall objective of financing and tapping the potential of the organized private sector in support of the SDGs implementation in Nigeria. So it is our role as the coordinating office for the SDGs to ensure these two platforms actually converge and work harmoniously and in synergy in terms of the objectives that we set out to achieve in the implementation of the SDGs.
In his remarks, an SDG Global Advocate and Emir of Kano, His Royal Highness Mohammad Sanusi II, spoke on the national imperatives for the achievement of the SDGs in Nigeria and how the private sector can help in this regard.
The President has talked about lifting 100 million people out of poverty in the next 10 years. The private sector is now coming in and sitting on the table and recognizing that it's got a role to play, and that it can no longer just focus on its balance sheet and its return on investment. It's got to talk about the well-being of the society and the people of the country.
The CEO and Executive Director of the Global Compact Network, Mrs. Lise Kingo, in her presentation, gave insight into the operations and philosophy of the network.
At the UN Global Compact, we feel that companies across the world must be a force for good. Without companies playing a very important role, the global goals will never become a reality. And I think also in the Agenda 2063 for Africa, the corporate input to this plan is hugely important.
The technical and interactive session of the dialogue has chief executives and private sector players dissecting and preferring solutions to the financing challenge for the SDGs.
Reporting should be made compulsory. I think everybody should explain how their business impacts the SDG goals and what they're doing towards ensuring that businesses are aligned towards realizing these goals. I think the Emir mentioned that everybody knows what poverty is, everybody understands what lack of an education is. But the reality is that there are models that work and have worked in other countries that do need to be immersed into our society to educate us as to how to do it.
Speaking with Agenda 2030 team, one of the coordinators of the PSAG Secretariat, Maurice Atoki, stressed the need for continued partnerships among industry players as they continue to strive towards achieving the common objectives.
If there's a bit more of harnessing and working together, impact is likely to be scaled. But we're not taking advantage of that togetherness. We're not taking advantage of that knowledge sharing. I think it's high time we leave behind all of our individual goals and aspirations and look at the goals and aspirations that is to be gained and to be achieved through the SDGs at a national level. Working together as individual private sector groups is not enough. The private sector groups need to come together.
The Global Compact Nigerian Network has the mission to promote the Global Compact's 10 principles and the Sustainable Development Goals in Nigeria. It supports sustainable business practices among private sector businesses, as well as provide a platform for business and non-business participants to engage and collaborate on local context issues.